As I said, I will start recording the webinar. So thank you everyone for joining. And I hope that you will find our session helpful. So please don't forget to include your questions in the chat. And Stasa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dimitra. Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me. My name is Sasha. I come from the Biosense Institute, which is a research and technology institute working at the intersection of ICT and agriculture based in Serbia. We are focused on innovation, both in terms of research and technology, but also on the business side. So I would say we work on the one hand side very much in the science and research area, but on the other hand, a lot with agri-tech startups and innovators supporting innovation in that field. I work as a project manager, and my job is primarily supporting and building this ecosystem of startups and SMEs in the agri-tech field through different financial open calls such as this one, but also through our internal in-house Biosense Accelerator and similar other projects. And within agROBOfood, I'm the work package leader for the open call and also the deputy coordinator. So I will present a bit of the agROBOfood project and the open call today in this webinar. I hope this will be useful and we'll have time for the Q&A, so don't worry, we'll hopefully get to all of your questions. So first, a bit about agROBOfood and the vision so that you know what this project is about. The agROBOfood vision is actually very broad, very ambitious. It is to build and expand this network of digital innovation hubs in Europe, but not just any digital innovation hubs, rather those that focus on high-tech robotic concepts, and not just for any field, but for the agri-food sector, as you will hear also in this open call. And why are we doing this? We want to demonstrate the applicability of these robotic concepts in the agri-food sector. So not just have the technology designed and leave it at the research level, but rather really show how it can be applied and how it can transform the agri-food sector, digitize it and make it better. And what is the concept? We have these digital innovation hubs that I mentioned, and it's a relatively recent concept in Europe. Those are actually one-stop shops. So those are institutions that offer a complete service portfolio to companies at a close distance. And what this means is that, for example, Biosense as a digital innovation hub works in the ecosystem, not only in Serbia, but also broader in the region, providing some in-house services, but also collaborating with external stakeholders who we know provide services, both business services, technology services, ecosystem services, and all together we can demonstrate this value of how robotics can improve agriculture and the agricultural field through these services and these new technologies. At the same time, agROBOfood has internal innovation experiments. So these are the innovation experiments that we are piloting. These have nothing to do at the moment with the open call. It's partners from the agROBOfood projects who are doing them in order to really show the value. So before we go to the external world with the open calls, we want to also within the project see what is happening. And we want to grow the ecosystem where we are establishing connections with different institutions, with digital innovation hubs, but also competence centers, with startups, SMEs, different stakeholders who really want to be part of this new movement of robotic in agriculture. And these open calls are just one of the ways in which we are trying to grow our network. And the open calls are a means, we have three, of giving financial support, but also including new startups and SMEs into our network by supporting them in developing their own innovations. And there are three different open calls. Two are for innovation experiments, and one is for industrial challenges. And there is quite a big distinction between these. Today we will focus on the first open call for innovation experiments. This is the one that opened on March 1st and is lasting until end of May. And then there are industrial challenges which open later this year. And the main difference is that in the innovation experiments, as we will discuss today, you're applying as consortia, so as teams of different SMEs, whereas for industrial challenges, you will be applying as a single entity. Another big difference is that in innovation experiments, there is a broad variety of topics that you can address with your proposed solution, whereas in industrial challenges, we will set different topics that we would like to see addressed. There are many other things that will be specific to one or the other, but as I said, today we will focus on the first open call for innovation experiment that is open at the moment, and its total budget is 2.65 million euros. So as you can see, it's quite a big budget, and it is one of the ways in which we would like to support this growing sector in Europe, which is focused on robotics in agriculture. Each selected experiment, this means the consortium as a whole, so the team, will get between 300,000 and 500,000 euros. So the budget is also quite big for each of the selected experiments. However, we're only looking for around 6 different projects that will be funded. So as you can imagine, this call will be quite, it will include quite a lot of competition. And it's not going to be easy to get the funding, but if you structure your application correctly, and we will go also through that today, you will maximize your chances. Each of the partners in the consortium can have between 50 and 300,000 euros, and we're looking for consortia of 2 to 5 membering partners. A bit about what's ahead and what the timeline for this open call one is. A bit over a month ago, we launched the open call. It was officially published, and we're currently somewhere in the middle of the way towards the end of the open call, which is May 31st. And after this date, no submissions will be available. Then during June and July, there will be evaluation. Evaluation is conducted by a pool of expert evaluators who are independently selected, also through an open call process, so they also have an application method of their own. And then once the evaluators create and bring their final solutions to the table, and we have 6 approximately experiments that we will fund, everybody will be informed about the process. You will receive your evaluation summary reports, and the process of signing the contracts will begin. Hopefully, we will be finished with all this by September, which is when the experiments are supposed to start. And I've heard from different people that starting experiments that are focused on agriculture in September makes no sense, but don't worry, we've thought about that, and it doesn't mean that you start with something in the field in September. It's an elaborate process for the experiments to be developed, and they will last all the way until February 2020 or 2022, actually, as you can see on the timeline. And so the first phases that will last through autumn and winter, you will not necessarily have to be in the field. You will work on different other things that will be important for when the spring comes and you can actually do the work in the field. Moving on to who is eligible. As I said, the main thing that we're interested in is that it's consortia, so teams of 2 to 5 partners. But it's not just about any partners. The partners need to combine one end user and one technology provider. And what this means is that as an end user, you need to have somebody who will actually be testing and potentially using the technology that is being developed. But at the same time, you need to have a technology provider. So that is somebody who works on designing and developing robotic technology, maybe not necessarily in agriculture at this moment. Maybe they're doing it for some other industry, but then want to transfer. The solution definitely needs to be based on robotic technology, as that's what this project is all about. And it needs to address a problem in the agri-food sector. And you can see a full list of fields that are applicable. It's quite wide. So as I said, this is quite an open call in the sense of topics and themes. And many are listed in the guide for applicants that I will mention later. Another thing, in order to establish eligibility, is to have a contact with the regional digital innovation hub. And what this means is that we've split the network, as you have seen in one of my earlier slides. into regions where we have allocated one institution to be the responsible one for each region. The reason why we are doing this is in order to have a better overview and be able to establish close-up connections to those actors that have similar realities with us. And I can immediately see a question here. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to respond to all of them as we go. Many will be left for the Q&A. But the partnership with the Digital Innovation Hub is not necessarily the same as the country of the applicant, but there are designated countries in each region, and then they're designated Digital Innovation Hub. These are listed on the website, and then there you will see all the countries that belong to the network and who their Digital Innovation Hub representative is and which country they're based in. So for example, Biosense as an institute does not cover only Serbia, but also Slovenia, Croatia, Romania, Ukraine, and some other countries. And the reason why we want this Digital Innovation Hub contact is because we want to know what's happening in the network. We want to be able to support you. We want to be able to find ways of collaborating beyond the open calls. And we really want to work together on building this European network. What kind of ideas are we looking for? These topics here, or these bullets here, are actually based on what you're going to be evaluated upon. So you need to address the topic. It needs to be relevant for the agri-food robotics field. You need to show technical excellence, and by this we mean that your solution cannot just be a repetition of something that exists. You need to show that you're either doing something new, that you're improving something that already exists, or that you're bringing some kind of innovation to this field. At the same time, we're not only focusing on technological aspects, we're also looking at the business side. And this means that you need to think about your market as well. You need to think about your business plan and your strategy. So while research is an extremely important component of the experimentation part, we do not want to leave it at that. We do not want to have just another example of something that was piloted but never used before. We want to strive to find solutions that will really be able to enter the market and to become commercialized. Then you need to show a sustainability impact. This relates to the broader agenda of sustainable development, where agriculture plays a significant role in CO2 emissions at the moment and is one of the biggest contributors to the greenhouse gas emissions. So you need to show us how your robotic solution will improve the sustainability of agriculture on a greater scale. And then we have the component of a diverse geographical coverage. And what we mean by that is that we want the network to grow, and we want to go beyond what agROBOfood as a project is covering already. So additional points will be awarded to those consortia that involve partners that are not already part of the core partners of agROBOfood. And a detailed list of countries that are not yet part of our network is available in the FAQ section on the website. We've listed them all there. Finally, you have the part that says it's implemented by competent partners. And what we mean by this is that the evaluators will look at who are the SMEs that are forming this consortium. Are they really SMEs that can deliver what they're promising? Do they have a proven track record? Do they have complementary skills to each other? Why are they the best team that we should give this funding to? A step-by-step process of the application is that first you need to register at the innovation portal. You will see that if you go to the agROBOfood website, there will be detailed information on everything. There are all these documents that you need to read, and please make sure that you dedicate enough time to reading all of them in order to make sure that you fulfill all the criteria and that you are aware of everything that being granted this funding you will go through. Then you need to find cross-border or cross-sectoral partners. And what we mean by this is that each of the consortia not only needs to have the 2 to 5 partners and address the need and so on, you also need to have among the team either a cross-border character, so involving an actor or actually an SME from a different country than yours, or somebody working in a different sector. And this can be that there are two technology providers in the team, where one has been developing robotic technologies in agriculture in the past, but the other one has been doing it for manufacturing, and now they want to transition slowly towards agriculture. This is already a cross-sectoral component. You can also opt for both cross-border and cross-sectoral, but you have to fulfill at least one of these. Once you have your consortium ready and you know who your partners are, you need to define your idea. And this goes to the project proposal and everything that will be asked from you there. So your idea needs to be sound, so that the evaluators want to select exactly you among the 6 winning consortia. Finally, you need to submit all the necessary documents before the deadline, because anything submitted afterwards will not be eligible. I've mentioned several times that there are important documents. Here is a list, and they're all also available on the website. There is something called Tisch, and this is a short version of the most important information. However, this document does not contain all the necessary legally binding information that you have. This is found in the agROBOfood guide for applicants. And this document might seem lengthy and difficult to read. We're here for all of your questions, but this is the document that is legally binding and that you do need to read before submitting your proposal. There is a proposal template. I would like to go through this as we move through this webinar today. And there are some other documents that are just administrative documents, such as SME declarations, consortium declaration, a declaration of honor, and bank account information. These last 4 are quite short. They're just documents that we need to have in order for us to be later equipped with everything needed to sign the contract. So you will see these are quite short, and I will not go into them today. Then once we select the experiments, and if you are one of the selected experiments, what happens? I said there are phases in order to ensure that the process goes smoothly. There are 3 phases. The first one focused on design, then develop, and then market. And just briefly, each of these, actually already the name says a bit of what's expected in this phase. During the first 3 months, each experiment will focus on designing the process for this experimentation. It's a very lengthy total timeline for the project. So we want to make sure that everything is set, that the KPIs are set, that we know what we are measuring and what we are expecting, and that we are all on the same page. And in this design phase, you will have somebody from the agROBOfood network also working somewhat closely with you to make sure that we also know how your project is going to develop. Then there is the phase called develop. And this is the part where most of the work happens. This is actually where you work on your solution, where you start testing it, where you improve it, when you test it again, and so on, until we finally get to the phase that's called market. And here, once you have your solution and you have everything ready, you focus on the business part. So you focus on your market, defining it, finding strategies for entering the market, finding first customers, validating your project, and so on. Hopefully by this point, this will be less of a project and more of a product that will really be something with a potential on the market. As you see, in total, we have 3 months, 9 months, and 6 months. So each of the phases has sufficient time to be completed properly. Upon successful completion of each of the phases, and how is this ensured? You will receive 30, 40, and then 30% more of the funding. This means that after each of the phases, you will submit deliverables. They're previously defined. I will mention them when going through the project proposal. And again, independent evaluators will review your deliverables. Once those are approved, you will receive financing. This part is very important to mention because this means that you need to have a certain amount of funding already at your disposal before starting the project in order to be able to do the work and then receive the funding. There is no pre-financing. You first do the work, then we approve it. We see whether the costs are eligible. Once all that is proven, then you get the installment. And this takes time as we go, It also depends on how successful you are with submitting your deliverables and getting them reviewed. And then the funding is not released all in total, it is released in these phases. In this sense, these are lump sums that you get, so you're not submitting receipts or anything. However, you do need to follow all the criteria as any European project when it comes to finance and accounting. I would say that that's what you need to know before applying in this sense. You go to the website and if you have any further information, you can contact me. Before moving on to the part where I wanted to show you the project proposal and the template, I just wanted to say that joining the agROBOfood network is not necessarily only done by applying for open calls. You can also contact us to see how you can join our network of digital innovation hubs and competence centers. We can see how we can find ways of working together for conducting experiments, validating, and getting access to different kinds of support. And just a bit about who we as agROBOfood are. I've already presented myself from the Biosense Institute. The coordinator of the project is Wageningen University and Research. And then we also have partners in different regions. So we have Eurocut in Spain. We have the Danish Technological Institute in Denmark, as the name says. We also have the Agricultural University in Athens in Greece. Fraunhofer in Germany, Draxis, who is organizing this webinar, is with us. So we're quite many, and we have quite a good coverage of Europe, but we're still looking at expanding the network, and we're happy to collaborate with you. This would be just my contact details, but I would now show you the project proposal template and give you a few key things to remember about that. Let's see. So this is the template. It's not very long. It has the key information, but what's more important is that this is just an outline and you're the one who needs to fill it in. This is also available on the website. I can show you the website once we're finished with this so you know where to find all the information. There are several key chapters. The first one is just general information. So this is related to the administrative part, who to contact, how, when. This is related to who the members of your consortium are. Then there is the proposal description, so the project proposal. Here is just the general description, your work plan, results, deliverables, and so on. Then, as I said, we are looking at the business part. So here we have a focus on those things like the business challenge and the business model. Then there is the technology part, which is also another important thing. So what kind of technology are you applying? The geographical overview and the architecture, technology services. But then we're also looking at other aspects that I already mentioned, such as sustainability, multi-actor involvement, ethical issues. And then finally, there is the budget part in Chapter 6. So just some key things to know: proposal title and acronym, a short summary for the website. And then we need the coordinator partner one details. By this, we mean the SME that will take the lead as the coordinator of the whole consortium. And we need to know who you are, as you, as the coordinator, will be our main contact point for the whole project. And then there is just the two brief questions. Information about your local digital innovation hub. This is the part that I was talking about in eligibility. You need to write the name of the institution and the contact person that you've been in touch with to prove that you have established this connection. And then we have this informative questions on the services that you would like to use. This is something that we as a network would like to provide as we select the experiments. And I will come back to this also later on in the proposal. Then there is information on each of the partners. So partners 2, 3, 4, and 5. Exactly the same. You only fill in as many as there are partners. This is quite evident. So then we go to proposal description. That was here. And please be careful and read everything as it's explained. For example, this length of the proposal cannot be more than 20 pages. And as I said, this is already quite lengthy. That means that your answers need to be to the point and really showing the evaluators why they should select your project. There's also a definition of the font size and the page and the margins and so on. So make sure to fulfill all these criteria so that your proposal does not get rejected just based on technicalities. Then we go into the general description, as I said. So here, you should think of this proposal template as a combination of a pitch deck that you would be pitching at a startup competition and a proposal template that is usually submitted for funding to different institutions. So on one hand, you need to focus on things such as the challenges that you're trying to address, like what are the problems in agriculture today that your solution then is really addressing. But then you also need to write specific objectives, and you need to later look at here. So I colored certain things that are not colored in the key template and that you will download. Make the main objectives and expected results measurable, but also so connect these deliverables and the results to the objectives. Make sure that you read the full proposal before starting to fill it in so that you can see what parts hang together, what parts are potentially better said in one place and not in another because you only have limited space. So it might be wise to save certain sentences and not use them in one part, but rather put them in the other. There is a part for the work plan and the activities, what are some expected results and deliverables. So here, be specific. If your objective is to improve the use of pesticides by using a certain robotic solution for spraying or for weeding, then make sure that your expected results and deliverables really relate to those objectives and show how you will achieve that and by which percent will you decrease the use of pesticides and similar. There is also a part on consortium composition. As I said, right, there is a part on cross-border and or cross-sector character of the consortium. So please make sure to explain how and why you selected these partners to be part of your consortium in order to ensure that there is this cross-border or cross-sector character. Then there is the business part. And here we go into this market-oriented section. You need to have a business model that is really describing what are the projections of your project. So what do you expect to achieve if a solution like this enters the market? How is it scalable? What do you do after you're done with just testing it in Germany, for example? How do you enter a broader EU market? How do you take it internationally? And what is the business innovation in your idea? Are you a B2B or a B2C type of solution, or what would it be? Would you think of it more as a service, or would you think of it as a solution that you would be selling to people? Would they be paying for a subscription, or would you be doing some other kind of business model? So you need to think of all this. And as you see, for example, here you have again the part in business model, but here we are suggesting to use one of these tools, such as the business model canvas. This gives you a very nice overview of things in a rather graphic way, so that you don't necessarily only write the words, but can show to the evaluators that you really thought this through. So make sure you don't overlap and don't write things twice. Make sure to split the information correctly. And then here we go to the technology impact. So after you finish the business part, you also need to think of the technology. And as I said, it needs to be, as it says here, either new technologies used or recomposition of existing or innovative process improvement. So make sure you think of this. Make sure you don't just propose something that already exists and works quite well. Think of all these things such as interoperability, replicability, reuse, innovativeness. So the evaluators will have these aspects in their evaluation scores, and they will try and tick the boxes to see that you've really thought about all of this. So try covering it. Then there is the geographical overview. And as I said, make sure to think about this as it's something that will later be a part of how you take this further and broader than your original focus. And then, as I said, I will come back to this. There are these technology services. And what we mean by this is that the core partners of the agROBOfood project already have certain services that they provide as either competence centers or digital innovation hubs. It can be support with business modeling. It can be, on the other hand, support with testing the new technologies. It can be support with intellectual property rights. It really depends. So here, you should think in the future, if your project gets selected, what are the competencies that you're lacking at the moment and that you would really like the agROBOfood partners to help you with? What kind of services would you expect here? Based on this, later on, the partners will assess at what point can they provide which services and how can this best be matched in order to make sure there is also a knowledge transfer and a know-how transfer in this sense. Then there is the part describe the environmental and other sustainability impacts. This relates to, again, as I said, the broader sustainable development agenda and how your project addresses this. The multi-actor involvement. So really think about the whole supply chain from the, as they say, farm to fork value chain. Who are you involving and in which way are you improving this process? And then finally, think about the ethics. In whichever way this appears, this needs to follow the European Union's ethical rules and principles, to make sure to familiarize yourself with that. And then finally, we have the cost justification and funding. There is a deliverables list. We wanted to make this easier for you so that you don't necessarily now have to think about what the deliverable will be. But as you see, each of the phases will have a report, as it says here, type R, all of them are a form of report, where you will submit something that summarizes either the plan for the implementation or later on the results of the experiment and so on. And upon each of the phases is completed, you will receive a certain percentage of the budget. And here you have the overall cost. This is the entire consortium that you expect for each of the phases. And then you have the budget breakdown in a bit more detail. As you will see, this is not super complicated nor detailed. So yes, you need to think this through, but we're not expecting a detailed budget plan. So we need to know the personnel costs, the travel costs, equipment, other goods and services, subcontracting, indirect costs, and that means for each partner. And as you will see here, we have a brief explanation on everything. So travel costs necessary for the execution of the experiment, or for example, subcontracting, which says in case of subcontracting, this should clearly be justified. And we need this for each of the partners. And when it says justification, you just need to write briefly what you mean by these costs and how you've come to this. So we don't need to see the full way of how you've calculated your personnel costs or equipment costs, but we do need to know what your way of thinking behind this was. That's it for the proposal template. And then, as I promised, I just wanted to show you one final thing, which was the website where you can find all this information. This was the guide for applicants. Let me go back a step. So the key agROBOfood website, the main page, is agROBOfood.eu. You have probably seen it. There's plenty of information here. And as I said, countries are split into regions. And here you can see these regions and who they are. And then you can see a bit more. As I said, Biosense is here in Central Eastern Europe. And then, for example, there is East Mediterranean or Northwest Europe. But then if you go to open calls, you get the information summarized, pretty much the basics of what I've been talking about today. So, for example, you have the topics for innovation experiments, such as agricultural robotics for crop production, or food supply chain robotics, or livestock robotics. You have the basic eligibility criteria. This, of course, is just bullet points, but the guide for applicants explains everything in detail. Then there is the open call documentation, which also includes this guide for applicants that I was mentioning, the proposal template that I just showed you, and these other documents that I said were present. There's the funding schema, which I briefly covered in one of the slides. There's the timeline for when everything is going to happen. And then, as I promised, here are the regions. So each of these people are representatives of a digital innovation hub in their region. And then here is a list of countries. So if you come from the United Kingdom, you belong to the Northwest Europe, and your contact person is Erik Bekeriet from Wageningen University. On the other hand, if you come from Greece, it is the Agricultural University of Athens, and then you belong to East Med region, and Michael is your contact. Here is the apply button, and we do hope to see as many applications as possible. I think that would be it from what I would like to say. I think I've been talking for quite a long time. So I would like to hear your questions, and then if we have some more time, I can also take you through some of the key aspects of the guide for applicants. If not, you can just familiarize yourself.
Thank you, Stasa. Thank you very much. Just to give you a breather, I've been concentrating all the questions that the participants are writing in our chat. So I will start asking based on what we have received, and you can provide the answers for everyone. So the first question the first two questions were answered, but another question we received is, would you prefer an end-user driven project or a technology provider driven?
So we don't have a preference on this. I think what is important for the selection of the coordinator for the project is to know that this SME has the capacity to undergo the administrative part. So as I said, this SME will be our point of contact, and this is the also partner that will receive the funding that will then be distributed to the other partners of the consortium. So in that sense, it demands a bit different effort than the other partners for, in a way, project management of the mini project. So I wouldn't say that it's necessary to look at whether it's end-user driven or technology provider driven, rather that the institution applying to be the coordinator has the competence and the capacity to execute this kind of role.
So I think it's a decision that the partners, that the participants need to take among themselves, from what I understand, and they need to take into consideration that there will be an extra effort for the person that will lead that specific proposal. So another question that we have is, what do we mean by robotics technology providers? Do we want robotics-oriented companies or companies that use robotic solutions, products to solve issues in various industries? For example, the company that creates drones, or the company that uses drones to offer technological solutions?
So I would say both can be a possibility. As I said, there can be this cross-sectoral component. We do not have a list of robotic technologies available at the moment yet that we are looking into and seeing. That is also part of the project, this mapping of technologies. But I would say, if I understood the question correctly, both types of SMEs can be eligible as long as the consortium as a whole works on developing a robotic solution, so a new and innovative robotic solution for the agri-food sector. So if they have been working on components from something else, now they can be moving towards agriculture, and that is perfectly fine. That is even this cross-sectoral component that we've been talking about. We would like to see more of that, as there are industries that are more roboticized than others, and agriculture is usually one of the least technologically developed. So we would like to see a transfer of technologies in this sense, but we would also like to see companies working specifically in this field already.
If I may say something on that, because in the question there is mentioned about various industries. It should be clear, but it's good to mention any industries that are involved in the agri-food sector. Always we're talking with agROBOfood, we are talking about robotic solutions for the agri-food sector. So this is not something very for every sector outside the agricultural. So another question that we have is if R&D institutions are eligible in the consortium.
If R&D, so this call is specifically for startups and SMEs. So this is for-profit business entities, and not only just any small and medium-sized enterprises, but those as defined by the EU Commission standards. So there is specific numbers on who these partners can be in terms of the number of employees or the profit they make and so on. So make sure you read this carefully. There is the possibility of collaborating with other people in the network, but that is not the primary target audience for this call.
So thank you. Keep writing your questions. We're gathering everything, as you can see, and we will go through each of them. So another question we received is if consortia are eligible with any type of R&D institutions. So I'm guessing maybe the question is if SMEs can combine with R&D institutions, or if both are eligible.
So, first of all, the R&D institutions in different countries take different legal shapes and entities. So I think this can be a bit misleading. A full member of the consortium, so on the list as I showed you in the proposal template with the 5 slots, can only be those that fulfill the criteria of being an SME according to the EU standards. You can work with, I guess, what you're referring to when you say these kinds of research and innovation institutions are the non-profits. You can work with them in other forms. So if there's some form of subcontracting or something, but still, as this will be evaluated by independent evaluators, you need to show the clear value for money aspect. And you cannot subcontract certain aspects of work, again, according to the legislation and the regulations. We have quite a detailed section in the FAQ part about this, as we received several questions on this, so you can also check there for additional information.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So our next question is if there is any geographical distribution on the budget, and I will make an introduction based on the FAQ, Stasa, if I'm not correct.
Yes, absolutely.
So the answer is that no, only cross-border consortia that engage countries that are not already agROBOfood partners will receive additional points, but it's not a matter of budget. So the budget is allocated between partners. Stasa, you can correct me if I'm saying something that it's
no, this is absolutely correct. The budget is distributed among the partners based on the work done and the expectations as shown in the budget template. But the geographical coverage, as you said, it brings additional points in the evaluation part. So this means that every single independent evaluator in their checklist of things that they're looking for in your proposal template will also have the part to evaluate the composition of your consortium and whether you include somebody from these countries.
So you can see about those countries. They are in our FAQ page, so you can go there and see exactly which countries are those that can give you some extra points for your proposal. Another question that we have is if there are any page limitations to the proposal.
Yes, it's written in the template. I think I said it was 20. I can double check so that you have the definite information here as well. So it says the total length of the entire proposal, so after removing the explanatory text and including the tables on costs and funding, should not be more than 20 pages. So this is the proposal template, as you can see.
Perfect. Okay, so 20 pages with everything included, and tables and of the costs and funding, everything should be included in those 20 pages. Another question that we have is, what is the maximum eligible TRL at the project kickoff?
The maximum TRL?
Yeah.
Okay. So we did not define a maximum TRL in this sense, and as you can see also the proposal when defining technology does not give any specifics on that. So it will be more up to the evaluators to see whether this is truly innovative, new, and can be achieved during the duration of the project in the full sense of what you're aiming for. So no maximum.
Okay, perfect. if you could please tell us more about agri-food competence centers and their role in the project.
Yes. So agROBOfood consortium the full consortium at the moment consists of around 30-something partners, and we have very different organizations and institutions within this project. We have universities, research and technology institutions, even SMEs, and then some of these institutions are digital innovation hubs or competence centers. And what their role in the context of the open call, in the project, they all have their different tasks and roles and so on. But what we're referring to here as competence centers within the open call is that we would really like to see ways in which these competence centers can support the innovation experiments when it comes to services they potentially miss. So let's say that, for example, within the Biosense Digital Innovation Hub, we have a competence center that is very focused on business side and on business modeling and providing business support services. And there is a project nearby that ends up being selected and needs support with go-to-market strategy and identifying and creating their business model. Then this competence center and these people could support the selected experiment in this part. And this would not affect the costs that you would be budgeting in the proposal. This is something that we want to do as part of our project and what we are planning in terms of our activities anyway. So this is more looking into the future in order for us also to know what kind of services are needed in the network.
Perfect. So another question, is there any requirement about third-party integrations?
I'm not sure I understand what's meant by third-party integration. Is it the subcontracting part or?
No, from what I can, any framework, it's written in the site. So if there is any requirement, like in the FI, where maybe that there were some software that was ready and people needed to incorporate it in their own solutions.
Okay, so at the moment we don't have any previous expectations in that sense. But I again would take you back to the aspect of technology impact and use of standards, that it should be something that's innovative or improving and so on, but then looking at these parts such as reuse, replicability. So if you think that there is something that you want to use that will add value and save time and money, but you can improve it, I think we have no specific guidelines on that.
Perfect. So there is a question that it's not fully explained. It says, please explain how it works if 3 partners apply maybe, but maybe we could ask for the person to rephrase it and we can come back to that. So I will pass that question and I will ask.
Also, if I didn't understand correctly the third-party integration, feel free to repeat the question and I can come back to it.
Okay. Yes, please send us in the chat any follow-up questions. We will come back to that. So another question says, please define the end-user partner. End users, to my understanding, in the agricultural sector are growers, farmers.
Yes,
so I'm guessing
that,
the question...
that is one section of end users, definitely. But if you think of the entire supply chain, it can also go to later people who do transport or people who do storage. So end users can also be places where you later store certain agricultural crops, or on the other hand, if it's more in livestock or there's some kind of refrigerator. So think of the end user also across the whole value chain, not just I'm working in the farm and in the field, and then that is my end user. That is definitely one of them.
Okay, so we have about 3 partners, the question, the clarification. So 1 technology provider plus 1 end user. So if 3 partners can, if there are 3 partners, can the 3rd partner be a second farm?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So no matter what number of partners, as long as it's within the 2 to 5 limit, you can have as many end users and as many technology providers as you want, or other types of SMEs if there are any, as long as there is at least 1 for the two categories that I said were mandatory, which is one end user and one technology provider.
Perfect. So another question we received is, do you receive already fund by other sources, ideas, or, okay, so if only new ideas will be funded, and in what stage should they be in?
Okay.
Idea, minimum viable product, already in the market?
So the stage is not defined as such, idea, minimum viable product already in the market, etc. But in the business part, the evaluators will look at what you're proposing. And of course, they will then opt for those that are not only most realistic, but also those that within the time limit and the budget limit and everything can have the greatest ambition. And so this is a fine balance between the different aspects. So it does not necessarily mean that somebody who only has an MVP will not necessarily score high because everything they need in order to get to the market is very good. However, somebody who already has a product in the market might actually have a great way of improving it and working on some other aspects. As for funding, there is an aspect that you will see in the guide for applicants in the evaluation score sheet that also the evaluators will get, where the evaluators will they will assess whether they find your idea investable. And here, in a way, previous track record of receiving either a mini investment or a mini grant or having an angel investor or potentially being even in a more serious process with a VC, these can all be proof that your idea really is investable because you have shown that other people have trusted you and that you're building on this legacy. So in that sense, it can be a plus. However, again, a fine line. In case somebody has already so much funding, why would then they need the agROBOfood open call one? So maybe somebody else gets prioritized. This part is not up to us. It is up to the industry experts. And just to say also a bit about this evaluation, all proposals will be evaluated by groups of 3 different evaluators. So it is not the case where only one person will look at your proposal. Rather, each proposal will have one evaluator covering business, one covering robotics, and one covering agriculture. So they will bring their different competences into evaluating all the different aspects of it. So probably the one that works most in business will have the best knowledge of what can be achieved in this sense and what covers in a nice way ambition and reality.
Perfect. Thank you. So one last question is the clarification regarding the TRL question. As you described, it should start from an idea and go through all stages to marketing. Is that okay to apply for an already running project?
I would say this again depends a bit on what the project is, but in theory, yes, because the different projects can still be in different stages. So even though somebody might have an MVP, there is still a way of organizing that into idea or design developed market part. So what for us in our stages is important, we are not looking at it as a startup road. We're more looking at it in terms of the project milestones. So we need to see how you're working out your plan, what you're working on. But as you can see, this kind of competitive call looks for somewhat mature solutions. So yes, if you already have something that is good to build on, of course you can build on that.
So there are no other questions in our chat, but I would like to ask a few questions that have been brought to our attention many times, and maybe they are useful to the participants as well. And one of those is if all participants can be from the same country.
Nobody can stop you from being from the same country. Of course you can. That means you're not covering the cross-border character. So either that means that within your country you have covered the cross-sectorial component, and then everything is fine in terms of eligibility, or you need to work on finding the cross-sectorial element within this consortium. If you can't manage that and you want to stay within the country, then you're not fulfilling all the eligibility criteria. But if you do that with the cross-sectoral, then there is no stop on that.
A question that we have just received is if the scoring is available in the fish.
No, unfortunately not. It is only available in the guide for applicants because that's where the most detailed description is. But I can actually, I think it's very easy to find. It doesn't take much time. I guess that you're referring to the scoring for the evaluators and then what you need to focus on. Let's see if it opens. No. If not, I can see if I can find it locally. Okay.
The question was if it was available in any of the material. Okay.
Yes, it's available in the guide for applicants evaluation process. So in 3.4, you have a full table of criteria, but also the ones that I listed in terms of how to define your idea pretty much cover these things. The financial impact, as you can see, is extra points.
So I will continue with another question coming to the coordination issue that we discussed earlier. There was a recurring question to us if the coordinator partner is responsible for distributing the financial support to other partners.
Yes. So the way it works is that among the selected experiments, the coordinating partner will always be the one receiving the installment and then distributing it further to the other members of the consortium.
So I think it's good for the partner that's going to undertake, as you said before, the administrative issues, to take into consideration that as well. So we need to be prepared to handle the different aspects of the project. One other question we received is if DIHs at this moment will act as mentors or as partners.
So we will. Are you thinking of DIHs that are part of the agROBOfood consortium at the moment?
Both, I think they are referring to both. Sometimes there is a confusion about the DIHs that they are already part of the network, and for the DIHs that are not part of the network.
Okay, so we can only discuss the ones that are part of the network at the moment in terms of what we know that they within the project are committed to. They will work more as mentors in a way, also as those who collect the information and who can connect you to the proper service provider, unless they are the ones who are delivering the service actually. As for the external ones, they're at the moment not entities that we have any control over in that sense. As I said, the call is specifically for SMEs according to these standards. So unless they comply with these criteria, unless they comply with these criteria, then they cannot be an official partner.
Okay, so we just received another question. If we can consider the innovation experiments as best practices, and yes, they are included. They are innovation experiments that are currently taking place within the agROBOfood project, and we will try to share as many as possible. We have different levels, different maturity levels to the experiments as well. So you can find some information there. And we have recently shared showcases from previous experiments. So you can take some ideas and see some information there as well. So we have a couple of more minutes because I think that if anybody has any other questions, please do share with us. I have a couple more from my side. A question that we have received is participants in the cost structures, if they need to use a specific rate.
So what we are looking for is just the overall and the total personnel cost, if that's what you're referring to, calculating personnel. However, later on, upon being granted the funding, the way you do your accounting and follow the administration needs to be according to the European and national legislation. So that means that In case there is an audit, you need to be able to show all the necessary paperwork documenting how you've been paying the personnel and so on. But in the budget template, you only need to write the total sum of what you expect to use for personnel costs.
Sorry about that. And I don't know if our participants have any other questions. Feel free. We have still some time. Feel free to write us your questions in the chat. Another question from my part, and we have received that through the various channels that we are using, is if SMEs, if one of the participants is SME, is it enough to apply? So again, we're coming back. I know that we have clarified that many times, but that all participants need to have the status of SMEs depending on the different countries that they are in. But I just wanted to clarify once again, it's something that we usually receive, that everybody participating in the specific call for the innovation experiments must have an SME status, independent of where they are. So another question that we have is, will the DIH act as a mentor or a commentator on the type of application?
Okay, so this is probably referring to the part of preparing the application process. The DIH, for example, we as Biosense, we cannot influence your application as that would be biased towards other applicants, and then not everybody could receive proper treatment. We can clarify things, we can explain things better, we can provide that kind of support, but in terms of specific input for the proposal template, the Digital Innovation Hub cannot do that. So it is more, I guess, I don't know if it would be a mentor or a recommender. I would say more as a clarifying point and a point of information rather than somebody looking at the input.
And two last questions. Can a company with a subsidiary in another country make 2 applications?
Actually, one SME, no matter how many subsidiaries or where they are and how they are, can make several applications as part of different consortia. What is important is that in case of being awarded funding, there can be no double funding for the same action. So in case that both projects by the same SME somehow get funded, these activities that the SME is provided cannot be the same, otherwise it would be double funding. So in that sense, yes, one partner can have 2 applications.
Will the regional DIH act as an evaluator?
No. So the evaluators are completely independent. They're usually experts in the field. Very often people from the industry working either in business consulting or in robotic bigger companies, or different agriculture backgrounds. So they're the only ones evaluating.
And will the regional DIH act as a partner during the implementation?
No. So the regional Digital Innovation Hub is definitely there as a supporting point in a way, especially as the goal is to build the network. So, for example, if an experiment gets selected in Romania, we as Biosense will probably make sure to keep following up on what's happening to some degree in order to ensure that the regional network is growing and that there is connections being built.
Perfect. I think that was our last question. So, Stasa, thank you very much. And a big thank you to all of you that joined us today for the webinar. We will make sure to share the presentation with you. Please don't forget to go to our site to get all the information that you need. And in any case, you can contact us in info@agROBOfood.eu and ask for any other questions that you may have. And we're looking forward to receiving your applications. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you very much from my side as well. And really feel free to reach out in case something is still unclear or you're left with any further questions.
Thank you. Have a lovely afternoon.
You as well.
There is a recording of the WebEx. As we said, we have started that one earlier. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a lovely afternoon.
Bye.